The sky turns black. The alien council station floated in silent orbit above the silver-blue world of Carthan Prime. It was a place built for peace, with shining halls and great windows looking out into the endless stars. Delegates from 12 great species had gathered here, each wearing the colors of their homeworlds. They had been told this day would mark the beginning of a new age. First contact with a young race from the far edges of the galaxy, a race called humans. Some called them primitive, others called them dangerous. The council wanted to believe they were here for peace. But as the suns rose over Carthan Prime, the light in the station's windows began to fade. At first, they thought it was a passing shadow. Then they realized the stars themselves were being swallowed. A dark wall was moving across the view, blocking out the sun. Station alarms chimed softly, warning of a massive object approaching. The counselors gathered at the glass and stared. A ship was emerging from the black. No, not just a ship. It was a city of steel drifting through space. It was longer than a continent and wide as a mountain range. Its hull was dark, covered in thick armor, broken only by the faint red glow of enormous weapons. Some whispered the name the humans had sent in their transmissions: Dreadnought. The air in the station seemed colder. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Even the veterans of many wars had never seen a vessel like this. The council's chief speaker, a tall crystalline being named Vera, cleared her voice. "This is a diplomatic meeting," she said, though it sounded more like a question than a statement. The Dreadnought moved with slow, perfect control. No escort ships followed it. No swarms of fighters surrounded it. It came alone, as if daring the entire galaxy to challenge it. One alien delegate muttered, "This is no envoy, this is a warlord." Another replied in a whisper, "Or perhaps both." A signal blinked in the air. The humans were sending a transmission. The council chamber fell silent as the voice filled the room. It was deep, calm, and measured. "This is the Terran Union Dreadnought Iron Resolve, Captain Nathan Hale commanding. We are here to talk." Only those 6 words came, and then silence. The counselors looked at each other, confused. No greeting, no show of weakness. Only the presence of a warship that could blot out the sun. Speculation spread quickly. Why bring such a ship to a first meeting? Was it arrogance, or was it a warning? Some argued it was protection. The galaxy was dangerous and pirates roamed its borders. Others said this was intimidation of the highest order. If peace was the goal, why make the first sight of humanity something that could destroy planets? The younger alien aides whispered stories they had heard from traders, that humans were survivors of countless wars on their own world, that their ships were built not for beauty, but for victory, and that once they entered a fight, they never retreated. The Iron Resolve drew closer. Details became clear. Massive gun batteries along the sides, missile bays the size of small freighters, and strange shimmering plates that looked like nothing the council engineers had ever seen. Some said they were shields. Others thought they were some kind of stealth armor. In the docking bays of the station, crew stood frozen. The Dreadnought's shadow fell over them like an eclipse. The ship slowed to a perfect stop, aligning with the main diplomatic dock. It made no move to power down its weapons. Instead, its massive cannons turned just slightly, not pointing directly at the station, but enough to remind everyone they were there. Inside the council chamber, tension was thick. Vera forced a smile and spoke. "We will welcome them, as agreed." Her voice did not hide the tremor. The other delegates nodded slowly, though some gripped the arms of their chairs tightly. On the large central display, the Dreadnought sent docking approval codes. Every one of them was correct, flawless. No sign of hacking, no trick. They were following every rule. And yet, somehow, that made it worse. The humans were showing they could obey the rules, but they were doing so from a position of absolute power. The docking clamps extended toward the Dreadnought. Metal met metal with a deep, resonating thud. The sound carried through the station's hull like the heartbeat of a giant. On the outer hull of the human ship, lights came on in steady lines. They looked almost ceremonial, like torches lit along ancient walls. A single boarding bridge extended, connecting to the council station. No soldiers rushed out, no armed squads prepared for an invasion. Instead, the airlock stayed closed minutes passed. Some delegates began to shift nervously, wondering if the humans were making them wait on purpose. Captain Hawley stood on the other side of that airlock, inside the dreadnought. He watched his crew with calm eyes. They were dressed in clean black uniforms, their boots polished, their hands steady. They carried no visible weapons. But each one moved like someone who had been trained for war. "Remember," Hawley said quietly, "we came to talk." His first officer gave a small nod. But Hale's own thoughts were darker. He had seen the latest intelligence reports. The galaxy they were entering was not safe, and though the Council had invited them in peace, there were already signs of treachery back on the station. The Council's chief guard leaned close to Vera and whispered, "If this is how they arrive for peace, I fear how they come for war." Vera said nothing. Her eyes stayed fixed on the great shadow outside the window, the shadow that had turned the sky black, and in that moment, she understood. This meeting would decide more than trade or borders. It would decide if humanity would be friend or conqueror. The silent arrival, the airlock door between the dreadnought and the council station stayed closed longer than anyone expected. The alien delegates shifted in their seats, trying not to show impatience. Every second of waiting felt like a small test, a quiet way for the humans to remind everyone who controlled the pace of this meeting. The silence inside the docking bay was so deep that even the hum of the station's engines seemed distant. Station workers stayed at their posts, but their eyes never left the massive shadow beyond the windows. It was not just the size of the dreadnought that unsettled them. It was the way it seemed to float with unnatural stillness, as if it could wait 100 years without moving, as if time itself could not touch it. When the airlock finally opened, it made no loud hiss, no dramatic rush of air, just a soft mechanical click. The first human stepped forward, tall, steady, dressed in a black uniform with silver stripes. He did not rush, he did not bow. He simply walked with the slow confidence of someone who belonged anywhere he chose to be. Behind him came two more humans, their faces calm, but their eyes scanning everything. No weapons in sight, yet every movement told the trained observer that they could fight if needed. Alien guards shifted uneasily. They had seen warriors before, but these humans moved differently, like predators who had no natural enemies. The Council's chief speaker, Vera, stepped forward to greet them. Her crystal-like form reflected the docking lights. She extended her hand in the traditional gesture of welcome. Captain Nathan Hawley stopped in front of her. For a long moment, he simply looked into her faceted eyes. Then he extended his own hand and shook hers once. Firmly, "Thank you for receiving us," he said. His voice was steady, carrying a weight that filled the entire docking bay. Vera nodded. "The Council welcomes the Terran Union," she hesitated, before adding, "We are glad you came." Hale's faint smile did not hide the fact that both of them knew her words were only partly true. As they walked toward the council chamber, the human officers glanced at the station walls. They seemed to be studying every corridor, every vent, every guard position. Some of the alien escorts noticed this and whispered among themselves. "It is like they are mapping the station in their minds," one said. "They probably are," another replied quietly. The humans did not speak during the walk. They simply absorbed everything. Even the way their boots hit the floor was in unison, a rhythm that made the alien guards feel like they were escorting an elite military unit rather than a diplomatic party. Inside the council chamber, the great circular table was lit by soft white light. The 12 alien representatives sat in their assigned seats. Their eyes followed every step of the humans. Captain Hawley walked to the open chair meant for him. Before sitting, he placed a small black device on the table. It was no larger than a hand, but several alien delegates leaned back instinctively. "This is for translation only," Hawley explained. His tone made it sound like he had already considered their suspicions. Vera gave a small nod. A flicker of relief passed over some of the alien faces, but the tension in the room did not fade. Once seated, Halle folded his hands in front of him. "I want to be clear," he began. "The Terran Union comes here seeking peaceful understanding." There was a brief murmur among the council members, but Halle continued, his eyes sweeping the table. "We do not come defenseless." The words landed like quiet thunder. The alien delegate from the Calvary Republic, a scaled figure named Thress, leaned forward. "Your ship." "It is the largest we have ever seen," Thress said. "Why would you bring such a thing for a first meeting?" Halle did not look away. "Because," he replied, "we were invited into a galaxy full of powers we do not yet know. And where we come from, walking into the unknown armed is the same as not walking out again." The room fell silent again. Some council members looked at one another, unsure how to respond. Others scribbled quick notes to their aides. Vera's voice was calm when she spoke. "We have agreed to this meeting in good faith," she said. "But you must understand how your arrival appears to others." Hale's reply was measured. "We understand," he said. "And you must understand, we protect our own." The humans and aliens held each other's gaze across the table. The translator device hummed softly. Every word felt heavier than the one before it. Outside the chamber's massive windows, the dreadnought floated in perfect silence. Its guns remained powered, their faint red glow like watchful eyes from the station's public decks. Crowds gathered just to see it. Some took images, some simply stared. Many whispered that it looked like it could crush fleets with a single volley. In the docking bay, maintenance crews avoided working near it, not because it threatened them, but because its presence alone made them feel small, as if they were standing next to a predator that could strike at any moment. Back inside, Captain Halle listened as the council began its first formal questions. They asked about Earth, about human technology, about their journey through the stars. Halle answered politely, but without revealing too much. Every time an alien delegate tried to press him for details about the dreadnought's weapons, he redirected the conversation to trade, exploration, or mutual security. It was diplomacy, but it was also a game, and the humans were playing it with the patience of hunters. By the end of the first hour, one truth was already clear. The humans were not here to beg for a place in the galaxy. They were here to claim it. And though the council did not yet realize it, the arrival of the dreadnought had already changed the balance of power. Outside in the cold silence of space, the iron resolve waited, like a coiled serpent, silent but ready, and the galaxy, whether it wanted to or not, was beginning to understand exactly what humanity had brought to its doorstep. Tension in the queue or not. The council chamber was a circle of power and suspicion. The ceiling was high and domed, lit by a gentle white glow in the center. The great table shimmered with a polished surface. Around it, the 12 alien delegates sat in their seats. The humans sat opposite, their black uniforms absorbing the light. It was the kind of silence where even breathing seemed too loud. Captain Nathan Hall kept his eyes steady. He knew every look. Every twitch from the council meant something. Across from him, Vera's crystalline form reflected dozens of tiny light patterns. Her expression was unreadable, but the way her fingers tapped against the table betrayed her unease. The alien delegate from the Calvary Republic, Thress, leaned forward, his scaled hands folded together, his eyes sharp and unblinking. "Captain Halle," Thress began slowly, "the size and nature of your ship have caused concern among our members." Halle did not flinch. "Our ship is here to ensure safe passage," he said. "We do not walk into the unknown without strength." A low murmur ran through the chamber. The representative from the Germ Dominion, a tall being with 4 insect-like arms, raised one limb. "Strength is one thing," it clicked in its sharp voice. "But bringing a warship capable of destroying fleets to a peace negotiation is another." Halle met its gaze calmly. "It is the same where I come from," he said. You do not leave your shield behind when meeting strangers, even if you hope to be friends. The translation device hummed softly. The chamber doors were guarded, but no one moved. This was not a shouting match. It was a slow, careful duel. Every sentence was a weapon, every pause a shield. The alien delegate from the Varthan Collective, a being made of living liquid metal, shifted shape in its seat. Perhaps the Terran Union does not trust the Council. It said in a liquid, echoing voice. Holly leaned back slightly. Trust is earned, he replied. And my people have learned to measure trust against risk. One of the younger alien aides whispered something to their elder. The elder's eyes narrowed at the humans. Holly noticed but did not react. Instead, he tapped a control on the small device in front of him. A hologram flickered into the air above the table. It showed images of burned human colonies, destroyed ships drifting in space. These are not attacks from your council members, Holly said evenly. But they happened in your galaxy. A murmur of discomfort moved through the delegates. The images shifted. Unknown alien warships firing on civilian vessels. Raided settlements reduced to dust. Peace is what we seek, Holly continued. But we came prepared because the galaxy we are entering is not peaceful. Vera's voice cut through the tension. Captain Holly, you must understand the message your dreadnought sends, she said. Many will see it as a threat. Hale's reply was immediate. Then they will understand us, he said. The weight of his words fell over the chamber like a heavy stone dropped into still water. Even those who disagreed with him did not miss the meaning. The humans were here to talk. But they would never come in weakness. Outside the massive windows, the iron resolve floated like a sleeping predator. Its dark hull reflected no light. Its massive guns still glowed faintly. From this close, the sheer scale of it was impossible to ignore. The alien council guards avoided looking directly at it. It was like standing next to something that might open its eyes at any second. Inside, the delegates began to shift the conversation. They asked about trade, resource exchange, and mutual exploration. Holly answered patiently, but never gave away too much. When asked about the Dreadnought's firepower, he redirected the topic to defense strategy. When pressed about human military numbers, he gave vague answers. It was diplomacy woven with steel, polite but unyielding. Some delegates grew frustrated. Others quietly respected the humans' discipline. The tension deepened when a sudden chime rang through the chamber. It was an incoming priority alert from the station's control center. A guard moved quickly to Vera's side and whispered in her ear. Her crystal body stiffened. There is an unknown fleet detected at the outer system edge, she announced. All eyes turned to Holly. He did not move. Are they yours? Thrust demanded. Holly shook his head. No, he said simply. The timing, however, was suspicious. An unknown fleet arriving just as the humans came to talk. Some in the council whispered that it might be a human trick. Others feared it was a test from some other power. Vera called for temporary recess. But Holly stayed seated. He spoke clearly. I told you, we came for peace. But peace means nothing if we cannot defend ourselves. He glanced toward the window where the Dreadnought's shadow loomed. If that fleet is hostile, you will be glad we came prepared. The council members exchanged uneasy looks. Outside, the unknown fleet began to move closer. Station sensors tracked dozens of ships. No diplomatic signals, no identification. Inside the chamber, the silence grew heavier. The iron resolve remained still, but deep inside its armored hull, power began to hum through its systems. It was a quiet warning. If the council wanted proof of humanity's resolve, they were about to see it. The break-in talks, the chamber lights dimmed slightly as the station's main power shifted to defensive systems. The air inside felt heavier. Delegates sat stiffly in their seats, glancing toward the giant windows that framed the black void outside. Beyond the glass, the unknown fleet crept closer. Dozens of ships, sharp and angular, with no markings of any known council member. They made no broadcast, sent no signal of peace. They simply advanced in silence. Vera's crystalline voice cut across the tension. "We do not yet know their intent," she said, "but their approach vector is toward the station." Several alien delegates began to speak at once. Some called for the Council's defense fleet to intercept. Others demanded that the human dreadnought stay docked and out of the matter. The sound of overlapping voices filled the room. Captain Nathan Hawley sat still, his face unreadable. He let the arguments swirl around him like a storm he had already prepared for. When the noise subsided, Hawley finally spoke. "You can debate all you like," he said slowly, "but in minutes, those ships will be close enough to fire." His words cut through the room like a blade. The insect-like delegate from the Jern Dominion slammed one of its arms on the table. "We are not asking the humans to intervene," it hissed. "Then you are asking your people to die," Hawley replied without raising his voice. The room fell into stunned silence. The translator device hummed softly. Some delegates leaned back, others leaned forward. The line between friend and threat was now impossibly thin. Vera straightened in her chair. "Captain Hawley," she said, "if you take action without council approval, it will be seen as an act of aggression." Hale's eyes narrowed. "If those ships fire first, it will be seen as your failure to protect your own station." His voice was calm but carried weight. No one in the room doubted he meant every word. A new chime rang. Through the chamber, a station officer's voice came over the comms. "Unidentified fleet is now within 15,000 kilometers. Still no response to hails. Defensive platforms are powering up." Hawley turned his head slightly toward the window. The iron resolve still floated in place, but faint red light rippled along its hull. The massive ship was waking. Its weapon systems were coming alive. Thress, the scaled cavalry delegate, rose from his seat. "I demand the human ship remain inactive," he said sharply. Hawley didn't even look at him. Instead, he spoke into a small comm device on his wrist. "Bridge, prepare jump drive and drive and bring primary batteries online." The translator repeated his words in every alien language in the room. Gasps followed instantly. The council chamber erupted again in overlapping voices, some shouting for restraint, others whispering that they wanted the humans to act. The political balance was shattering right there at the table. Then the broadcast interruption came. A voice, cold and mechanical, filled the chamber. "This station will surrender all command authority," it said. "Refuse, and you will be destroyed." The source was traced instantly to the unknown fleet. The threat was real. Every delegate froze. Some looked to Vera, some to their own guards. Many found themselves glancing toward Captain Hawley. He was the only one in the room who did not look surprised. "Negotiations are over," Hawley said quietly. He stood, pushing his chair back with deliberate slowness. Vera raised a hand. "Captain," she began. Hale's eyes locked with hers. "I told you," he said. "My people don't wait for answers while their lives are in danger." Outside, the iron resolve moved. It was like watching a mountain drift silently through space. Its docking clamps released with a deep metallic echo that vibrated through the station walls. The massive vessel eased away from the council station, rotating with slow, deliberate precision until its forward batteries faced the unknown fleet. The glow from its cannons intensified. Inside the chamber, the alien delegates felt the weight of its presence like gravity itself pressing down on them. The unknown ships accelerated, energy readings spiked, station alarms blared. Vera shouted for the station defense fleet to form a perimeter, but it was too late. The first volley of fire came from the unknown fleet. Bolts of bright energy streaked through space toward the station, and before anyone could process it, the Dreadnought's guns spoke. A single shot from the iron resolve tore across the void. It didn't just hit one enemy ship, it split through three in a single line. The shockwave lit the darkness with burning wreckage. The alien delegates stood frozen in the chamber, some in awe, some in horror. The humans had not asked permission, they had simply acted. Hale's voice came calmly through the chamber's comm system. "Your station is under my protection until the threat is gone. No further debate." He closed the channel before anyone could answer. On the displays, the Dreadnought fired again. Enemy ships broke formation. Some turned to flee. Others were annihilated where they stood. The council meeting was abandoned. Delegates rushed from the chamber to watch from the observation decks. The Iron Resolve moved with terrifying precision. Every shot it fired found its target, and with each blast, the galaxy's understanding of humanity shifted further. This was no first contact meeting anymore. This was a display, a warning carved into the stars. By the time the last enemy ship was destroyed or fled, the Dreadnought hung alone in the black, its guns cooling, its hull glowing faintly from the heat of battle. The station was safe, but the negotiations lay in ruins. Whatever fragile bridge had been built between the humans and the council was now broken, and yet, for some in that chamber, respect had replaced fear. The humans had shown what they were capable of, and no one in the galaxy would ever forget it. The first shot, the battle had ended, but the echo of it still filled the station. Outside the great windows, burning wreckage drifted slowly. Fragments of the unknown fleet tumbled in the black void. Some pieces still glowed with fading heat. Others spun silently like dead leaves in the wind. The station's alarms had gone silent, but the air inside the council chambers was heavy with something else. Not just fear, but the realization that nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. Captain Nathan Hawley had not returned to the chamber. Instead, he stood on the Iron Resolve's bridge. Around him, his crew moved with calm efficiency. Their faces were focused, their voices steady. This was not victory celebration. This was work, damage report. Hawley said quietly, "Minimal," his first officer replied. "No casualties, no system failures." Hawley nodded once. It was exactly what he had expected. Back on the station, the alien delegates were divided. Some shouted for immediate sanctions against the humans. Others demanded the council thank them for saving the station. The insect-like delegate from the Jern Dominion slammed two arms against the table. "They acted without authorization," it hissed. "They acted." "When you hesitated," the scaled cavalry delegate Thress replied. The two glared at each other. The tension between the delegates was almost as sharp as it had been between them and the humans. Vera, the crystalline speaker, stood and called for silence. Her voice rang through the chamber like the chime of crystal bells. "We must recognize the truth," she said. Without the human dreadnought, this station might have been destroyed. A murmur of agreement rippled through some of the delegates. Others remained still, their eyes hard and suspicious. "They saved us," Thress said firmly, "but they also showed us their true power," the Varthan liquid metal delegate added. "And that power is something we cannot ignore." While the council argued, the Iron Resolve stayed outside. Its massive hull still glowed faintly from the heat of battle. Scorched armor plates told the story of the enemy's failed attack. From the public viewing decks of the station, crowds of civilians stared at it in silence. Children pressed their hands to the glass. Merchants whispered about the trade possibilities of human alliance. Soldiers whispered about what would happen if that dreadnought ever turned its guns on them. Instead, inside the Iron Resolve, Hawley received an incoming message from the council. They wanted him to dock again for continued talks. Hawley considered the request for a long moment. "They are not ready for talks," he said finally to his first officer. "They are still deciding whether they see us as saviors or as a threat." The officer nodded. "And which would you prefer they decide?" he asked. Hale's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Both," he said. The captain then opened a private channel to Vera. Her crystalline face appeared in the holographic display. "You acted without our permission," she said. "I acted because you could not," Hala replied calmly. "You brought a weapon into our meeting that could kill all of us," she said, "and I used it to save you." Hale answered. Her silence after that was not anger, but thought. Finally she spoke. "You have changed the negotiations," she said. "They were never negotiations." Hale said quietly, "They were introductions." Elsewhere on the station, news channels replayed the battle footage endlessly. The moment the Iron Resolve fired its first shot became a frozen image, the red glow building in its forward cannons. The streak of light tearing through 3 enemy ships at once, the explosion lighting the black like a second sun. For some, it was the image of salvation. For others, it was a warning. But for all, it was unforgettable as the day moved into the station's artificial night cycle. The council finally agreed to resume talks the next morning. But the agenda had shifted. No longer were they focused on trade routes and cultural exchanges. Now they were focused on military capability, on alliance terms, and on how to handle a species that could arrive in the largest warship anyone had ever seen and leave nothing standing in its path. On the bridge of the Dreadnought, Hale watched the drifting wreckage on the main display. His mind was not on the battle. It was on the message the battle had sent. The unknown fleet had been a threat, but in truth, they had also been an opportunity for the humans to show the galaxy exactly what they could do, without words, without negotiation, just action. When the last fragment of enemy debris faded into the distance, Hale gave the order to power down the primary weapons. The ship's glow dimmed, but the image of it firing that first shot would remain in the minds of everyone who had seen it. The Iron Resolve had not just defended the station. It had carved a place for humanity in the galaxy's memory, and that place would never be removed. The station's artificial night had fallen, but the Iron Resolve did not rest. Its massive frame floated in the darkness like a predator that never slept. Lights along its hull pulsed faintly. Deep inside, the crew moved with quiet precision. Every action was purposeful. Every step was measured. They knew the captain was planning something, and they knew it would change the shape of the galaxy again. Captain Nathan Hale stood at the center of the bridge. His eyes on the main display, it showed the star map of the surrounding systems. One sector glowed in red, the coordinates where the unknown fleet had come from. His first officer approached. "The council sent a message," the officer said. "They request you stay here until they decide on the next steps." Hale didn't turn. "They want us still," he said. "They want us waiting." He looked over his shoulder. "We do not wait." The bridge crew exchanged brief glances. They knew what those words meant. The Iron Resolve was about to move. Hale tapped the console and expanded the red sector on the display. "There are colonies in this region," he said. "Human colonies?" The officer asked. "Not yet," Hale replied. "But there will be if we don't let what happened here happen again." The jump drive status flashed on the side panel, charged and ready, but using it now, without the council's approval, would be a deliberate act of defiance. Hale knew it, his crew knew it, and still, there was no hesitation. "Plot a jump to these coordinates," Hale ordered. "Full combat readiness on arrival." The helm officer nodded once and began to work. The sound of systems coming online filled the bridge like a quiet drumbeat. Back on the station, Vera sat alone in her private chamber. She stared at the hollow window showing the Dreadnought. She had seen it in battle and in stillness, and both had unsettled her in different ways. When her come chimed, she answered at once. Hale's face appeared. "We're leaving," he said simply. Her crystal-like features hardened. "You will cause an incident," she warned. "You already have one," Hale replied. "Now I'm going to make sure the next one doesn't happen at your station." She leaned forward slightly. "Captain, if you leave, some will see it as an attack." Hale's expression didn't change. "They can see it however they want," he said. "History will see it as protection." Before she could answer, the channel closed, the Iron Resolve's engines flared softly, and the docking space between it and the station began to widen. On the observation decks, crowds gathered to watch. Whispers filled the air. "They're leaving," someone said. "Where are they going?" another asked. No one had the answer, but many felt a quiet sense of relief that the Dreadnought's guns were no longer pointed in their direction. Others felt a different fear. If the humans were gone, who would defend them if the unknown fleet returned inside the Iron Resolve? The jump sequence began. Massive coils deep within the ship began to hum. Energy built up in layers. The air on the bridge seemed to vibrate with it. Hale stood still, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the growing light in the jump drive indicators. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. His first officer stepped closer. "If we arrive and it's a trap?" The officer asked quietly. Hale's eyes didn't leave the display. "Then we show them what happens when you bait a human warship," he said. The hum deepened into a low roar. The lights on the bridge shifted from white to red. Final systems. Checks scrolled across the captain's console, all green. 5, 4, 3. The space outside the dreadnought shimmered. Its massive hull began to distort the starlight. 2-1. The iron resolve vanished. One instant it was there, the next it was gone. Only a fading ripple in space marked where it had been. The jump was short by dreadnought standards. Only a few systems away, but when they emerged, the scene before them made the bridge go silent. An asteroid base floated in the dark. Dozens of the same unknown ships from the earlier battle were docked there. Repair crews worked in open space. Weapon platforms ringed the rocks like sharp teeth. Hale took in every detail in seconds. "Target their command center," he said. "Now." The first shot lit the black. It hit the asteroid base's central hub and blew it apart in a sphere of fire. Docked enemy ships tore away from their berths in chaos. Some tried to flee, others turned their weapons on the dreadnought. The iron resolve moved like a hunter through the debris. Each shot from its main batteries destroyed another target. Secondary guns tracked and eliminated fighters as they launched. The battle was fast. It was precise. It was devastating. In minutes, the base was gone. The survivors scattered into the void. Hale ordered no pursuit. Instead, he turned to his crew. "Send a message to the Council," he said. "Tell them the source of the attack on their station has been removed." The COM officer nodded and began the transmission. Hale looked back at the battlefield. Wreckage floated in all directions. The dreadnought's lights cut through the dark like the gaze of a predator. On the station, the Council received the message in stunned silence. Some called it reckless, some called it justice, but all of them now understood one thing. When humanity decided to act, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The galaxy holds its breath. The wreckage of the asteroid base still floated in the void. It was silent now. Only drifting metal and faint glowing embers remained. The iron resolve turned slowly, its hull dark and cold against the stars. Inside, the crew worked without celebration. They knew this battle was over, but they also knew the war had just shifted. This was no longer about a single attack. This was about the message that had been sent, and the galaxy had heard it loud and clear. Captain Nathan Hiles stood at the forward viewport. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. He could see the endless black stretching ahead, a place filled with powers that had ignored humanity until now. They would not ignore them again. He could almost feel their eyes, the watching fleets, the listening spies, the silent admirals calculating what it would take to destroy a dreadnought like his, and realizing the answer might be more than they could give. The communication channel lit up. Vera's image appeared, her crystalline features catching the light. "You destroyed an entire stronghold," she said. Her voice was steady, but the faint echo carried an undercurrent of something else. Not anger, but caution. Hale didn't turn away from the viewport. "I removed the threat to your station," he said, "and I removed the threat to any human ship that will travel your space in the future." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Do you understand what this looks like to the rest of the Council?" she asked. Hale finally turned to face her. "Yes," he said. "It looks like they are no longer the strongest in the room." On the station, the Council chamber was tense. Some members called for sanctions, others whispered about alliances. The images of the dreadnought in battle were already spreading across the networks. Every civilian, soldier, and merchant in the nearby sectors had seen it. The sight of its first shot cutting through 3 enemy ships, the destruction of the asteroid base, and the calm precision of its retreat. To some, it was a symbol of hope. To others, it was the shadow of a new threat. In the darker corners of the galaxy, warlords and pirate kings spoke in hushed tones. They measured their fleets against the iron resolve in theory. Most stopped those thoughts quickly. The math was not in their favor. Even the larger empires began moving their pieces cautiously. If humanity could build one dreadnought like this, how many more could they have waiting beyond the edge of known space? No one knew. And that uncertainty was more dangerous than any confirmed number. Back on the Iron Resolve, the crew began the slow return to neutral space. Hawley walked the length of the bridge. He paused at each station, speaking to his officers in quiet, steady tones. They were tired but unshaken. Some were young and never seen real battle before. Now they had fought in one that would be remembered for decades. And they had done it without losing a single human life. The captain's chair waited at the center of the bridge. Hawley lowered himself into it. His first officer approached. "Council won't trust us after this," he said. Hale's mouth curved into a faint smile. "They'll respect us," he replied. "And respect is worth more than trust." The officer nodded slowly. He understood. As the ship moved, Hawley looked over the star map again. The galaxy seemed smaller now. Not because it was less dangerous, but because humanity had stepped into it without flinching. He thought of Earth, far away, of the colonies, of the people who would never know how close this station had come to destruction. They would only hear the stories, and the stories would grow. They always did. News networks across multiple systems replayed the same footage. The dreadnought's shadow blotting out the station's sun. Its guns glowing in the darkness. The ripple of space as it jumped into battle. The blinding flash as the asteroid base was torn apart. In homes, in military barracks, in markets, the same whispered phrase began to spread. They came to talk. But they left a warning. Vera's private message arrived hours later. It was short, only one sentence. "The galaxy will remember this day." Hawley read it twice, then closed the message. He didn't need to reply, because she was right. They would remember. Some with gratitude, some with fear, but none with indifference. As the Iron Resolve cruised through the black, its engines burning a steady trail of light. The crew worked quietly. There was no music, no cheering, only the steady rhythm of a ship that had done its job. And in the silence of the void, the galaxy held its breath, because humanity had arrived, and they had brought the kind of strength that could change everything, for better or for worse. The first contact had ended. The negotiations had collapsed, but the legend of the dreadnought was only beginning.